favorites. If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Good morning and welcome to Saratoga Today for August 12th, 2023. I'm your host, Howard Kravitz, and you see on the screen right now my co-host for today, Patrick Kunzel and Charlie Freeman. Guys, how are we doing this morning?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Doing great. Patrick, you were just in Pittsburgh on vacation watching your Atlanta Braves, which would probably need some explanation to some people at a later time. Have some wins and losses. And Charlie, what's new with you? You're going back to school pretty soon, correct?
Yeah, no, just honestly been doing a lot of packing lately, hanging out with some friends before they leave for school. And then, leave less than a week now, leave next Thursday.
Beautiful. Well, we're excited to have you guys on. And in case you're wondering, Patrick and Charlie, of course, if you're not familiar with them, although you should, are on a Bet and Boozin' show. And they have been crushing it lately. And that's why I have them on today. People are wondering, where's Pete? Where's Paul? Well, first of all, Pete's in California, and Paul needs a break once in a while. But really, most importantly, these guys have been killing it on the Bet and Boozin' show. And Patrick, just real quick, I know you had a fantastic betting weekend yourself when we saw you at Saratoga. You don't have to give details, but very profitable weekend for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was. I guess you could look at Whitney Week as being, you see the favorites and the obvious choices, but I saw some favorites, but I also liked a couple longer shots on the board, and they happened to come through, and that was just one of those weekends where they piled up for me, which was nice. Very
nice. And of course, one particular win bet that you were not overly happy but cashing with which we talked about in the test stakes, but that counts as well. Charlie, are there any me and Mr. Seahorses today that we're going to be talking about?
We'll have to see when we cover it late. I definitely think there's some tough ones in these higher class races where quite as many options, but I'm happy to see me and Mr. C has been on an absolute roll. So if you are not on the wagon yet, you should get on while you still can.
Absolutely. Nice and a great score also last week on the Saratoga Power Picks on the Sunday with some nice scores. Real quick, let's see who's here. Richard Avalar is here. Good morning. Hello. Paul wants to know. No, it's Saturday, Paul. I did not have school today. These guys think I was not on the show Thursday night because the Arlington Million is at Colonial. I was trying to avoid it. I actually did have open house Thursday night, guys. Some parents came. The students come Monday, believe it or not, for me. So I am ready to rock and roll for school. Mike Monroe, good morning. All races remain on grass. Still holding the MTOs. Mike, the weather looks like it's going to be okay in the early part of the card for sure. Chance of rain later at Saratoga. If it does rain, it's going to be thunderstorms. Who the hell knows, guys? We're going to assume everything's going to be on turf, but be prepared later in the card, especially for some races to come off the turf if there's rain there. Let's see. Trish Smith wants to know, no morning shows for Kentucky Downs or Keelan. Trish, how many shows you want us to do here? I love both those tracks. We're not planning on doing any morning shows after the Saratoga meet, but if they're popular, Trish, why not? You guys up for some Keelan morning shows on a Saturday for the big days in the fall?
Sure, why not?
Why not?
I'm open to it.
All right. Charlie's like, nah, I'm already. Charlie's like, wait a minute, this is already too early for me. I'm usually sleeping.
College football season for Charlie.
Yeah, it's a game day. That's going to be a tough show to make.
That's a good point. All right, guys, let's get to the pick five. Now, for you folks at home listening and watching, thank you very much, by the way. A few quick items. Please make sure you subscribe on the very bottom. I know Charlie could do it because he's on the bottom of the screen. The very bottom right-hand side of the screen, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you know when new content will arise, and smash, and I mean smash that like button. We only have 3 likes right now. Come on, people. Smash that like button. You can follow us on Twitter as well. I have it on my name tag. Charlie does. Patrick doesn't want anyone to follow him, so he doesn't have it on his name tag. That's okay. You can follow. Patrick, what's your Twitter handle real quick for people to know?
It's just at Patrick Kunzel. So just include my last name, space it back, and it's just straightforward Patrick Kunzel.
Okay, there you go. Very simple. Follow these guys on Twitter as well. And then real quick, of course, you can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor. We've got Power Picks. Look below the video player, regular Power Picks. We also have Saratoga Power Picks. And then we have a great podcast, a great website, hhhracingpodcast.com. All right, guys, we're going to be talking about the late pick 5 because we have not talked about Saratoga today at all on any of our shows. We had Colonial, and then you guys covered yesterday Saratoga late pick 5 on the actually Patrick, you weren't there on vacation, but anyway, the Ben Boone guys covered the late pick 5 on Friday. So we're gonna be talking about some races that we have not talked about on this network at all. So let me go ahead and bring up some banners here very quickly. You're gonna see banners across the screen for our picks for our top 3 coming up right here. We have some similarities, guys. We have some differences. Not this first race. This first race looks like, just bet the house on the 8 and call it a day, everyone, because Love Reigns is going to rock. At least that's what we all hope for. Let me go ahead and do that. Sorry, guys. Hold on a second. I didn't want to do that. What is going on here today? Hold on a second. I want to do – I need to bring it on screen first. Having some tech issues, guys. I apologize. Oh, this is very interesting. Okay. For some reason, guys, the live TV. It's not coming up on the screen, even though it should be. Hold on one second. Let me try something else. Huh. Oh, there we go. Very strange. Apologize, everyone. I don't know what's going on. All right. First leg of the pick 5, race 7. It's the Galway Stakes. Fillies, 3-year-olds. They're going 5.5 furlongs. Let me go full screen here. You see the field here of 10. Again, there are a bunch of AEs and 3 There's 2 AEs, the 11 and 12. There's 3 MTOs if it comes off the turf. Let's hope it doesn't. The main body of the field has 10. Moorline favorite is the number 8, Love Reigns, for Ward and Rosario. We are all going in that direction. Charlie, what do you like about this Wesley Ward trained filly?
Yeah, so I know the horse has been on a bit of a layoff. I remember that I think on Ben and Boozin we actually covered the race that Love Reigns was supposed to be in, but that I don't remember if it was weather or if the horse just scratched in general. But I think there were some others in here as well that might have been in that race that had to scratch. So I guess that would be the only slight concern, although it's not that long of a layoff. But yeah, for me with Love Reigns, what I honestly really like is, unlike most Wesley Ward horses, this horse has actually shown the ability to be able to sit more off the pace and then finish strongly while still having that early speed, which is really nice. Yeah. Obviously, he's been running in some massive races. Running in that BC turf grade 1 obviously did not go so well. Horse was supposed to fire, but honestly, though the horse doesn't have too many efforts in America, the rest has been stellar. And clearly, from a figures and talent perspective, Love Reigns is the pick of the horse to beat if she can run back to what she's capable of, and I believe Love Reigns will. And it looks like you guys do as well.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, Charlie. We know the Wesley Wards in general like to go to the lead, but this one is able to rate. I like the outside post also because she can just break and look to her left and see what's going on. I know there's been some Rosario hatred on this show a little bit, Patrick. Not all of the hosts are fans of Rosario, and he look, I can go either way with him, but he did ride the horse last time. You like this girl also, Patrick?
Yeah, the hatred for Joelle is, it can be warranted, but I also agree with you, Howard. I tend to side with Joelle more times than not, and I think in this spot, Love Reigns looks to be the class and should sit a nice trip, as Charlie pointed out. I know Paul in the chat said the work tab hasn't been extra special, which I'm not too concerned about that, and the layoff doesn't concern me too much. I just like Love Reigns. The only thing that honestly might concern me is the good turf course. I'm not sure. Not saying it's a bad thing for Love Reigns, but I'm not sure if she will take to the good on the softer side. But then again, who will in this race? We don't really know.
It's fair. It's listed as good right now. Charles B wants to know, are they on the turf? Yes, they're on the turf today. The weather should be fine until later in the day, if at all. It might be all good. We'll see. I have nothing to add, guys. I think Love Reigns is definitely the horse to beat. I think there are some others, though, that we do need to discuss. And you look underneath, we're sort of all over the board. A bunch of us do have the 4. Let me go ahead and go to the 4. It's a love fest because Love Appeals is the 4 for Clement. Has a number 2 back, guys, 87 that absolutely fits. Lost last time. I'm not going to show the replay. Didn't get the best trip. Charlie, you've got that one 3rd. And Patrick, you have that one 2nd. Patrick, I'll let you quickly talk about Love Appeals a bit.
Yeah, Love Appeals. I've been following her. She's had, one on debut, came back and, kind of struggled a little bit in a race, but has been bet in every race, rightfully so, with the connections. Um, I don't think Love Appeals is as good as Love Reigns, but stands above this class and could make one late kick if the speed holds up in this race.
Yeah, no question. And Patrick, I should have. Oh, there you go. Now that it was a little dark. Now it's lighter. Maybe that's the computer
Oh,
screen. I don't know if you can. You're good. Charlie, any quick thoughts on Love Appeals or what you've got? The 9 also, who is very speedy. Maybe can wire the field. Stone Silent, who's improving for Asmussen.
I think Patrick has the 9, but yeah,
Oh,
with
that's
the
Patrick. I'm sorry, my bad. Sorry. You can talk about My Sweet Affair if you'd like, or you can just go back on Love Appeals if you want.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so for My Sweet Affair, I mean, for Love Appeals, Patrick kind of hit a lot of what I was going to say as well. I do think Love Appeals, I think a lot of people in the chat agree as well that the two love horses, could very well end up being the top two together. It could be a love affair altogether. But for a different affair with My Sweet Affair, getting Irad, George Weaver, who's, been very solid lately. I know the figures don't necessarily jump off the page other than the 89 figure way back, but I think the horse can still take a step forward. Has shown a lot of consistency, which I do like. No real terrible effort. Ran very well against Love Appeals and sat a nice trip off the pace and then closed well late after, sitting 3 lengths, which normally isn't a lot. In a turf sprint is a decent amount of ground to still have to cover and got within a head. I think the one key for this horse is I do think since there's other horses like Love Reigns and Love Appeals that also will sit a little off the pace and then try to make a move. My Sweet Affair will definitely have to make sure to have enough early pace that she doesn't have too much work to do late, but I still think can certainly be in with a shot and at a nice 6-1 price. If you do feel strongly about Love Reigns like I do, could certainly be a nice horse to put in the exactas that could finish in the money.
A-Roth, this is really important now. The reason why we do these shows a little bit later than we originally had is because scratches are going to be coming in. I don't have it up on Twitter right now. So if scratches start coming in, like A-Roth said, the 5 is scratched in this race, according to A-Roth. So if scratches come out, everyone, that'd be Anna's Arabesque. If scratches do come out, everyone, please feel free to put them in the chat. That'll give us a little bit of more info. Or if you guys, Patrick and Charlie, you can follow Andy Serling on Twitter. He puts out the scratches right away. Do you guys see scratches out right now, like publicly out?
Yeah, I do. The only other scratch in our sequence here is the in the 10th is the 8th Skylander.
Okay, so everything is clear as of right now. Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, that's
the
cool.
also eligible. Yeah. Yeah, we're good.
Okay. By the way, I got to bring this. Hold on a second. Let me bring this banner down. Guess who's in the chat, guys? Waking up very early. Noah Maher. Noah, wow, good for you, man. What is it? What time is it out there? It's 7:45 in the morning. Charlie, no complaint about getting up early, man. Your betting and boozing buddy is up in California bright and early. Noah, what's up? How you doing? Thanks for joining the show. All right, guys, let's go on to the next leg here. Let's go to race 8. Race 8, let me go ahead and bring it up on the screen. Let me do this here. Here we go. Race 8. Race up. I gotta switch it. Guys, I'm not doing a great job this morning. Hold on one second here. Hold on. All right, we're good. I just gotta switch some things around. All right, race 8. Here it comes right now. There we go. Saratoga Special, guys. Grade 2. This is for the 2-year-olds, for the babies. This is for the baby boys. It is a small field of 6 with the morning favorite number 6, Rhyme Schemes, for Norm Cassie, 4-5 on the morning line. You see our picks on the bottom of the screen, guys. 2 of you are going to go with Rhyme Schemes. I'm going to get a little bit cute, so to speak, with a second choice Pletcher. Patrick, I'm going to let you talk first about Rhyme Schemes. This is a horse a lot of people are going to have to make some decisions about because the main question is this huge buyer that Rhyme Schemes got, a 94 that we see on the screen. Real, fake, somewhere in between? We don't know yet. What's your thought?
Yeah, my thought is somewhere in between, to be honest. I don't think a 94 buyer is justified. Did win by 9 lengths, was on the lead. We can look back at Ellis Park, and the fact of being on the lead there was just instrumental in winning races. If you were on the lead, you had a great shot. Very hard to kick up in a race like from being off the pace. So I just think this horse probably justified to get around an 80 buyer speed figure, which would be great for this race. So that's why I kept the horse on top. Norm Cassie has been doing really well at this meet, paired up with Ricardo Santana. So I do like Rhyme Schemes a lot. That race that Rhyme Schemes comes out of that he won also had a couple winners in that previous race. So I like Rhyme Schemes, but I do not think the 94 is justified, to answer the question.
So Charlie, real interesting. You can see on the screen these italicized font are the horses that won their next out. Past they had to finish third, dropped in buyer from a 60 to a 56, but Timberlake went from a 58 to an 85, and then their horse went from a 54 to a 52. There's just a lot of mixed signals here. One thing we do know, Charlie, is Ellis tend to be very speed favoring this meet, and so I think this number is a little bit hard to figure. That's just something everyone's gonna have to make their own decision on.
No, I agree with Patrick, though. I mean, while the effort wasn't as impressive as it was, there were some other horses that came out to win by 9 lengths, regardless, against pretty much any field, is still impressive to an extent. Horses worked, I'd say, decently. I don't think the 94 is justified. I agree with Patrick. I think it's probably too high. And I do think, as you mentioned also, that, having that speed at Alice is beneficial, especially the fact that Rhyme Schemes didn't have to work crazy hard for it and was able to start to get away pretty early and then put the field away again pretty early on. Didn't really have to battle with a horse back and forth the whole time and waste much energy. But the one thing that still, even though I do have my doubts about Rhyme Schemes, and I have a feeling people are going to kind of overhype and overbet the horse. However, I think even though a regression is inevitable in my eyes, with how big the difference is to the next horse in this field in figures, I think even with the regression, Rhyme Schemes would still be too strong. Because I feel like, honestly, even with the figure maybe in the 80s, I mean, we're looking at a field where the highest is like a 68, 69. I will say, though, I do like your move with Hall, because for me, when I was looking, if there was any horse that I thought could beat Rhyme Schemes, I would say Hall, just because I do like that this horse was able to sit right behind the speed and then go away. So I do think, Pletcher's also been doing tremendous, and it's always great to have Irad when they're together. So I think if there is a horse that's set up to potentially upset Rhyme Schemes, I do think it is Hall.
Hall is the 9 here on the St. Elias. The green silks are on the outside. Did it very professionally, guys. And we can talk about 2-year-old numbers all day, but I don't get too excited about big 2-year-old figs with Rhyme Schemes. And you'd have to believe that this Pletcher trainee is, number one, going to improve second out. And number two, the 6.5, I believe this is 6.5, right? The distance of today's race, guys, 6.5, tends to be a separator, in my opinion. In my opinion, when they go longer, you'll see the cream rise to the top, so to speak. And this horse by Army Mule, and the Army Mules have been absolutely on fire. This is Eclipse Thoroughbreds. These are IRAD, guys. These are serious connections. And that 3-1 is a complete pipe dream. I'm going to guess, guys, I'm going to say this. What Rhyme Schemes is 4 to 5 more in line. I think it's going to be like Rhyme Schemes 6 to 5, Hall like 8 to 5. I think it's going to be really close. There's no way in hell we are getting 3-1 on a Hall at all. But I think he's going to improve a lot. I think the distance helps. I think it's pretty much 4-6 to the hoop. We didn't talk about out of 5. We're going to move on to number 5, who did win last time at Ellis for Asmussen. And when Tappets win first out, guys, this horse has a lot of talent also. Charlie, you have this horse third. Patrick, you've got Lasso third. It's pretty much a 2-horse race, 4-6. Any of your thoughts, guys, before we move on?
No, I'm good.
All right, let's move on, guys. Let's move on to the next race here. So I go ahead and put us on screen, and let's do that instead. Too big. Race 9. Race 9, a lot of 4s and 6s, again, for good reason. Now, Charlie, this is a race that you and I should have very strong opinions on. You want to talk about where were we when we watched this race last time? These two horses coming out of this race, which I'll show on screen right now.
Yeah, we were live at the OTB and made it very clear, both of us did, that Annapolis seemed kind of, I guess, in a way untouchable and seemed like the clear-cut horse to win. And it was just a matter of, do you have a strong opinion of someone to put below? And I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe we both did have a strong feeling that this was just between Annapolis and Casa Creed. And I think we both kind of felt that the value play in that race was to do Annapolis over Casa Creed, because it just seemed inevitable. It would come down to those two, but that Annapolis would prove too tough. And then what actually happened was Well, Costa Creed got the exact trick that we expected Annapolis to get. Annapolis had the exact thing that we kind of thought would happen to Costa Creed with having too much work to do, and
Yep.
Costa Creed not getting there in time. And I'm guessing I'll let you touch on what you believe, but what I believe is that Irad learned from what happened last time. Not that he did anything particularly wrong. It's just kind of how the race developed. But to kind of ensure, at least in my eyes, that Annapolis will be a little closer and try to make sure that Annapolis is right with Costa Creed or even a little ahead. Because with the kick that Costa Creed showed, obviously Annapolis can't really afford to be too far behind. So I think Annapolis does turn the tables. I'm curious to think what you think, as we were both had very strong opinions about this horse. Obviously, the public did last time out as well. But I think Annapolis can bounce back and will.
Let's watch the start, guys, because I thought, and Charlie, you were literally sitting, 6 inches from me? I mean, we were right next to each other watching this race on this day, the Kelso. And I turned to you right away and I said, I don't like it. And when I say I don't like it, watch the 2 and the 8. The 2 is Annapolis. The 8's Casa Creed. Watch the 2, Annapolis, who actually broke fine but got pinched. It's hard to see here in the yellow there. I'm going to rewind it. I don't have the head on here, but this is the pan shot. The 2 got pinched a little bit and got sort of studied back along with the 4. And right here, Charlie, I didn't like it at all. I thought the 1 right here, I thought Annapolis would be right here where my arrow is. Casa Creed was fine, but if you would have told me Casa Creed was ahead of Annapolis going to the first turn, I would have been very surprised. That's exactly what happened. Now, as we fast forward here, again, here's Annapolis, here's Casa Creed. Annapolis is getting a perfectly good trip, Patrick, but Annapolis really should be like up here, really where my arrow is, and not back where he is. And what we're going to see here in the stretch, I'll go ahead forward here, is nice job by the jockey here. Casa Creed gets the jump. Here's Annapolis, Patrick, following Casa Creed, but it's hard to run Casa Creed down when he gets a head start, Patrick.
Yeah, you're not going to outkick Casa Creed in the stretch, I don't think. And that's why I do have Casa Creed on top. To be honest with you, I think Annapolis, and you pointed it out, needs to be more forward. I think in this spot, Annapolis kind of needs to be on the lead, in my opinion. I think, get out there and, anchor it down, pull those fractions in, and, walk the dog, as they like to say, because I would not want to flirt with Casa Creed, sitting behind or next to down the back stretch, then having to outkick, because I do not think Annapolis will outkick Casa Creed in the stretch if it comes down to those 2 dueling. And I just think at this point in time, Casa Creed is the better horse, and that's why I have Casa Creed on top.
I don't think Annapolis is going to have a lead because My Sea Cottage, I mean, why is this horse in the race? The only reason why this horse is in the race is to try to wire the field. I mean, I'd be shocked if Dylan Davis takes back at all. I think this is just a send, and the Cassies are just hoping to get a placing. So I think Annapolis will sit off of My Sea Cottage, which is fine. But I agree with you guys. Annapolis needs to be much more forward. He's talented. He's a bit quirky. I see 8-5 on the morning line. So high, has a little bit of early speed, but not enough early speed. 7-5 on Casa Creed. Here's a great question, Patrick. Who's going to be favored? Are we sure Casa Creed's going to be favored in this race?
No, I honestly think Annapolis will be favored.
Do you really?
I do. Yeah.
Charlie, do you have a pin? I mean, it doesn't really matter. They both can be low prices, but I don't know. It's an interesting conversation.
No, I think they'll definitely be kind of floating back and forth. I actually also agree, though, Patrick. I think just when you see how much Annapolis took, I think a lot of people are going to naturally, I mean, it kind of depends. I feel like your more casual bettors who maybe didn't watch or bet the race are going to go, oh, Casa Creed won, and just bet Casa Creed. But I think a lot of the people who bet the horses that day will likely see what you saw as well, where Annapolis didn't get that good trip, and where we typically would have expected the 2 horses to be, it was flipped the other way. And I think a lot of people think it'll kind of go back to what they expected the first race to turn out in. And that's why I think Annapolis could end up going off as the favorite.
Yeah. We're going to move on, guys, but don't forget about Emmanuel, who got a dream trip last time, and I didn't think was going to win that race, did win. I mean, you'd figure another dream trip is coming, guys. So I wouldn't short shrift on Emmanuel. To me, Emmanuel's a C. If it's not Casa Creed or Annapolis, I'm probably going to lose the pick 5. But just my personal opinion, guys, and we all have this horse third, so there's really not too much else to add. We all pretty much feel the same way. Let's go on to the next race, guys. The next race, race 10, is a starter allowance. And these last 2 races I thought were pretty difficult, to be honest. I don't have a very strong opinion at all in this race. It's starter allowance 50. They're going, I believe it's 1 mile out of the chute, which Patrick, you saw up close, and you can tell everyone that it's a pretty short run into that turn. And outer posts are no bueno, by the way, at all on this mile shoot. Being there in person, you get to see it even more. You really want to be on the inside in general, unless you're a dead closer and breaking from the outside. It's a big field of 10. It's wide open. The Moorline favorite here is number 5, Mystical Curlin. Let me go ahead and bring our picks up on the screen. You see we're sort of all over the map here. I don't even have the Moorline favorite anywhere in my top 3. Charlie, you're going to go with the number 6, a Cece Bello, I believe it's pronounced, New York bred, for Duggan and McCarthy, in very good form, showed nice speed last time.
Yeah, no, the horse just took a huge step forward. And again, this, as you mentioned, this is a very tough race. There is no clear-cut winner in my eyes as well. So honestly, for me, an angle, if for those of you watching Bet and Boozing, that I kind of highlight a lot, and I know Kyle does as well, is just looking for progression in a horse. And after this horse took, a big layoff with that awful 37 on debut, puts up a 61, which obviously not great either, but then jumps up to a 74, which you're like, okay, that's respectable in this field, and then jumps up to an 88, which is good enough to, I would say, a performance like that could beat anybody in this field. And for me, I just like to see that steady progression. Also looks like the horse likes running a dirt mile. That's where the horse has the strongest figures. The works have also been very sharp with a 47 flat on July 22nd.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just feel like when you're looking for a race where there is no heavy, strong favorite, just look for someone who's at least showing progress. Look for someone who has something that stands out to the rest of the field. And for me, I don't think any horse is showing this type of improvement. And Patrick, I'm curious if you had that same angle as Cece Bello in terms of just repeatedly improving in form. And I don't think the horse needs to take a step forward, but if Cece Bello does, surely should win this race with a step forward from an 88.
The host of your show, guys, is just checking in. Love seeing the boys on Saturday morning. Give me some winners, boys. What's up, Kyle? Late happy birthday again. Shout out to Kyle Roscoe on his birthday this week. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, it's just, Charlie, you hit good points. I found it interesting too with Cece Bello. Has not been bet really at all. I mean, has been, a long shot in every race. And most of those were state bred races. So, but I really like the last 2 races. That allowance race came back really strong. I know the horse didn't win, but I thought that last race was impressive. That second place finish. So I went with the improved Cece Bello in a spot where it's very wide open.
I didn't have a real strong opinion, like I said. My only concern with Cece Bello, guys, the horse is improving, Charlie, yes. But that last fig was so big and it was on the lead. I'm not sure he's getting the lead this time. So I'm feeling a bit of a regression because of that. But this horse can absolutely win. I'm using this horse. I'm going to go with the 2 guys. This is a bit of a guess, I will say. But there's a few things I like about Forest City. And Patrick, you like this horse a little bit also. You have him second. I like the switch to Mott, obviously. Is going to get a real nice trip in theory from the inside. Has got numbers that fit. And this is a starter, allowance. And so you can make the argument that the horse is actually dropping slightly, Patrick, from N2Ls and N1Xs, although they are in Indiana. So it's pretty much of a lateral move. But the fact that he's switching to Mott and should get a good trip and has speed figs that fit, I think this horse is very logical. I'm curious to see what this horse does today.
Yeah, and I like the way Mott plays, obviously, Hall of Fame trainer, but Billy Mott places horses in good spots, even in lower ranked spots. And, Howard, everything you hit on was pretty much what I thought, and could be on or near the lead in this spot as well.
Yeah, I'm sure the 6 is going to show speed. There's a lot. This is an interesting race. Gut feeling is not slow on the inside of the 110. By the way, newly trained by a guy named Dutro, who I think moved up to play to Barrio slightly last week, and might try to move up a turf horse, Patrick, that you and I talked about at Colonial Downs. But anyway, that's another conversation for another day. There is some speed in this race, or magnitude. I think there's some speed on the outside, if I recall. Maybe not. I thought there was one. Memphis is a fascinating horse. We're not going to talk about him, but cost $850,000. Pletcher dropped him in for a maiden 40, and then he won. And now Linda's claiming. There's a lot of stuff going on in this race, guys. So I think this is where we're going to get the price, frankly, in the pick 5. Let's go to the last race. Charlie, do you want to add anything else? I was against the 5 for the sort of the same reasons that we mentioned. This is like a need the lead type with just one big number. If you toss out the 103, and you could say, well, you can't toss it out. I'm tossing it out. It was on the slop with an easy lead. I think this horse is very hard to trust personally, but I understand why you've got him second.
Yeah, honestly, and then another horse also with the 3. You're right. The 3 horses that really interest me are all ones who had wins going away or near wins that were on the lead and kind of able to just get away with it. And honestly, that was kind of my thought, was just maybe one of these 3 between 3, 5, and 6 should be able to be the speed that actually holds up, and just hoping that one of them is the one that's able to do it. For Mystical Curlin, yeah, personally, I think because of that 103, this horse will get bet on way too much, because a lot of people are going to see that. And I don't think in a race this wide open, it's worth taking that risk. But I still think the horse could be in the money. And then with the 3, I mean, hasn't had a bad figure to date. Ran at Gulfstream, which I think is again a lateral move, has been very impressive there. Although the money wasn't anything too high, and then moves over to Saratoga and just wins going away. So another price one, at least for order of magnitude. If it were me, I would lean towards betting the 3 or 6, just because at least with either of those, you're getting value. For me, the 5, I think, could be in and around the money, but for me, it is not one I would touch if you're playing the race on its own, just because I think a lot of people with that 103 are going to bet this horse way more than it deserves.
Yeah, it's a very tough race. I think it's going to be very trip dependent. The second to last race of the day, the penultimate leg, race 10, is very interesting. By the way, we have a ton of people watching right now, guys, on YouTube, on Twitter. Hundreds of people are watching right now throughout the world. Thank you very much for watching Saratoga Today, as myself, Patrick, and Charlie from Bet and Booze and the co-hosts. We are covering the late pick 5 here at Saratoga Today on Saturday. Guys, let's get to the closeout leg, because, hey, if you can't hit the last leg, you're not going to hit the pick 5, pick 4, pick 3, whatever you're playing horizontally. Our picks are now on the bottom of the screen for the last race. I thought this last race, guys, was real tricky. We'll talk about it here for approximately 5 minutes. Let me go ahead and bring up the entries here. The last race, and we're going to assume, here we go again, we're going to assume it's going to be on turf. If there's any race that is taken off the turf, by the way, I think it's likely to be this one, only because of what the weather looks like, where it might be worse later in the day. Let's hope not, though. This is a New York bred allowance. They're going 1 16th on the inner for fillies and mares. Nice purse at 95,000. You see, it's the main body of the field has 10. Then there are 2 MTOs. The 11 and 12 are only going to run if it is switched to dirt. So if it stays on the turf, the 11 and 12 are not going to be in. The morning line favorite here, and it's a very soft morning line favorite, is the number 2, Waterville, for Clement and Rosario. Patrick and Charlie, you both have the 2 on top. I have the 2 in third. Charlie, let's go to you first. I go ahead and bring up the PPs here for Waterville. Waterville is a nice closer. Is 7-2 in the morning line here. Gets blinkers on 1 for 9. There's some things to like. There's some things to question, though, as well.
I mean, yes, certainly something to question whenever it's a deep closer like Waterville is. I remember this race, though, because I believe this was also the day we were at the OTB covering our live show. I remember I felt very strong about Silver Skillet in that race, who went on to win. But I was very impressed that anyone really got close, because I thought Silver Skillet would dominate this field, and was originally going to, until Waterville just came out of nowhere and just flew by all the horses, was just picking up the pieces and got within a half length and nearly got there with Flavien Prat. With Christophe Clement, who's obviously a very solid trainer, I think the figures certainly fit in this race. I do think the horse, if Waterville can show a little more early speed, just to not be too far off the pace, which I do think the horse is capable of, I think Waterville could be surprisingly tough in this spot. I am curious with your strong feelings on the 6 Salib, because I remember on that day, the host of the show, Patrick, and I are on Bet and Booze, and Kyle also felt very strong against Salib. And I remember we had Salib over Silver Skillet that day. So I'm curious to hear your angle with that horse. But yeah, I think Waterville is, I don't know necessarily a deserved favorite, but I don't know if there's a horse that really is. I think this is another one that's fairly open. That's why there is a self favorite. But I think if Waterville can sit a little bit closer, should be very tough in this spot.
Yeah, that's the question. What are the blinkers going to do? She. Well, I don't have a drink with me. She's never had blinkers, guys. So it's going to be interesting to see. I guess the question is, the blinkers more for focus or more for speed? Like usually with the turf horses, to me, it's usually more for focus and make sure they see other horses. With dirt horses, to me, they put blinkers on more for speed purposes. So I don't know. I think this horse, Patrick, is going to be under 7-2. I think this horse will be like 2-1. But again, hard to trust. Rosario, big field, etc. Let's talk about the 6. Now, Charlie and I don't have the 6 anywhere, Patrick. You have this horse second. I have this horse first. I'm going to talk first. When you look at the PPs here, here's the main question. Is this horse better going shorter? Now, when they switched to Maker, an 83 and a 71, much better figs than before, but that was sprinting. Last time they went 2 turns in the mile, and you might be saying, okay, Howard, why are you picking this horse? This race is a mile and a 16th. And Charlie, I'm going to get directly to your question right now. This trip on the first turn was completely ridiculous. And this was the Waterville race. Solib in this race is the 2. Watch what happens, everyone, to the 2 in this race. The 2 is right here. Solib breaks fine. He's a bit headstrong. I'm just going to let it show through. Sort of in the green on the inside. You're going to see a lot of trouble on the inside as they start bunching together. Gets completely checked, steadied, shuffled. Was awful. Watch carefully the 2. I'm trying to watch the arrow. Right here, the jock starts taking back, and then, oh boy, a lot of trouble. You see real headstrong, get checked all the way back. It was just, and now the 2 is all the way back here, when I really think the 2 want to be somewhere up here, guys. So to me, this is a tricky horse to ride, Charlie, and I'm sure Patrick saw the same thing. But I think this horse will be more forward in a race that doesn't have a lot of speed in it. And Maker can get a horse, no problem with the distance. So this is more of a trip play for me. Patrick, was that your thought here as well?
Yeah, it was. And I like, looking back on a race like that, because you're going to get a price now with Salib, because I don't know if everybody's going to see that situation that occurred there. And I look for Salib to get back.
Well, they saw it now. The whole world just saw it now. We just showed all of the horse racing world.
But the horse was bet in those the past 2 races. So it leads me to believe that this horse should bounce back today.
Yeah, I don't know how talented this one is. And 4-1 might be a little bit light, but I think it's a little bit interesting. Let's talk also about the 4, and then we'll go and end the show. Stella Mars is tricky horse for me, Charlie. I have her second. You have her second. Patrick has this horse nowhere. What I found weird was she's improving, but the lack of works to me was strange. But then I looked back, and this horse doesn't really work that often or that fast anyway. So maybe I'm reading too much into it. This Stella Mars was a tricky read for me, Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, not too much to work with, as you kind of mentioned. Certainly noticed that as well, because I am someone who tends to, uses point, obviously more so with younger horses, but nonetheless likes to point out that a horse is working forwardly usually. But for me, I try not to note too much because, as you mentioned, it kind of does look like a pattern for this horse. And Stella Mars still ended up showing up firing. Had that one workout June 9th, and then runs a month later from the last workout and goes out, sets a career best buyer, sits a beautiful trip off the pace at a price, and then comes in to win by 2. And that was kind of my angle where I think Stella Mars could certainly be interested at a price. As this horse, likes to sit off the pace, but doesn't, the change that Stella Mars showed last time out, which speaks volumes to me, was set off the pace, but not nearly as far back as usual, which could be beneficial because if Waterville doesn't move up a little more, like I think she'll need to, Stella Mars could end up getting the jump. Now, I do think Waterville is a much stronger late kick, which could make up for it anyway. But again, certainly if you are looking for a little bit more of a value, and I think you will get all of that 5-1, I think Stella Mars is a very interesting horse to at least be somewhere in the money.
Mike Ponfic, I believe is probably pronounced your name. Mike, thanks for joining the show. I don't think we've seen your name in the chat before. Singling Waterville, guys. That's ballsy, but listen, in a race where there's many, why not just take a shot? And last horse I'm going to mention, just because they're friends of the show and sponsors, Rehan is an Adelphi horse, guys, that, Charlie, you only have third. My only concern with Rehan, and I'll show this horse, is she's a bit one-paced, and I don't know if the mile and a 16th on the inner is the kind of horse you want for this spot, because you usually want a horse with like some kind of turn of foot and can close, and these like plotters, the inner course doesn't work real well, and I think this race might be a little bit short for her. but she gets blinkers off. Here's another one that could win also, Charlie.
Yeah, again, I mean, for me, the big concern I have with the 10 in terms of winning is just needing some more early speed. I mean, you see the figures of 39 is obviously worrisome, but at least the figures, again, have been consistent. I do think the horse who's also, which I think is important to note, has been pretty lightly raced, hasn't been running all that often. So I think certainly has room for improvement and can take steps forward. Again, as I mentioned earlier, with the horse that I have on top, I like Christophe Clement a lot. I think he's a very underrated trainer that sometimes floats under the line of the Pletchers and Chad Browns of the world, but ends up having great horses and other strong races. So I think with a step forward, I think at the very least could be in the money. I think the one angle, though, that I do have to acknowledge for multiple horses that I've covered in my top three is they are kind of pace-dependent closers where if there isn't enough early speed, could struggle. But I do see some horses that I think will have to go and can certainly, especially as you mentioned with, I think Salib could end up being more forward. Certainly Lady Jasmine could be forward. Galleyhead, Spinning Colors, amongst others. I do think there's enough horses that would want to move forward that could set up for these stalkers and closers that I have in my top three. And I'm assuming that's the angle you've had as well. And same with you, Patrick, with the two on top as well.
Yeah, I find the last two races, guys, tricky. Now, we're not going to talk about the pick five as we end the show, or excuse me, our horizontal bet here. My opinion, guys, we'll just a quick whip around is I'm going to go thin early and spread late. I think the last two races are very tricky. Patrick, is that your general thoughts for people that want to play this pick five horizontally today?
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to get to the last two races and just spread out in those races in the final two. I think, both stakes, you can make your strong opinions and then spread.
Charlie, was that what you'd recommend, or do you have another idea for horizontally in this pick five?
No, for me, I would honestly probably start out with maybe one or two horses, depending on how strong you feel, like how I do about Love Reigns. And then honestly kind of just decide, are you going rhyme schemes, or are you going to maybe pick one or two other horses instead, kind of how you've covered before, Howard, where you kind of either have to single the heavy favorite or bet against it. And then again, next race, you're probably going either Annapolis or Casa Credo if you want to play it safe, take them both. And then, yeah, definitely going 3, 4, 5 deep in those last two where it gets more unpredictable. They're less proven and there isn't someone, who jumps off the page.
Yeah, and everyone should pay attention to race 5. Race 5 today at Saratoga is outside of the pick 5, but whoa, there are some serious babies. And it's also the first dirt race for 2-year-olds they've written for 7 furlongs, guys, which is something to pay attention to, because that means not only these horses are precocious, but they might want to go a little bit longer. You're talking possible like Breeders' Cup juvenile starters in this race, especially with the 1 and the 5 horse in race 5. And Charlie, I don't know if you also looked at the whole card, but Larry Ravelli has got some very live first-time starting New York breds running at Saratoga today. So it's one of those typical Saturdays, guys. Great combination of older horses and stakes and some babies running. You got to pay attention to the babies because I think there's some future stars possibly today, Charlie.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, and I think it's interesting because I know what we've talked about in our chat that we've noted in that race 5 2 horses that we think could be very impressive that you and Patrick mentioned, and I see in our chat Aroth is all over Todd's horse, who I believe is the favorite, the 1 Eliminate, who he's saying could be a monster as well. So
how many R's is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Aroth loves that horse.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the mathematician like you, but that's definitely at least 3+ R's.
That's a lot of them.
Yeah, that usually, once you get past 3, that's when you start to know it must be a real monster. But I certainly think that could be one of those races that kind of, floats under the radar and could be one where, you look back and you see a few of those horses where maybe that one didn't win that day, but ends up running huge. And, as you mentioned, some of these end up running one of the biggest races in the country one day. Certainly a race to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting today at Saratoga. Guys, thanks for joining me this morning. You did an awesome job. As always, looking forward to see you guys later in the week. For my co-host, Patrick Kunzel and Charlie Friedman, this is your host, Howard Kravitz, for Saratoga Today, August 12th. Let's hope that rain stays away. Crush your bets at Saratoga. Take care, everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
This is a big try for Outings. If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.